Now, as he faces a tough re-election fight in November, President Barack Obama devoted much of his annual State of the Union address Tuesday night to his plan to speed the U.S. economic recovery. VOA White House correspondent Kent Klein reports.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Like all presidents before him, President Obama entered the House chamber to rousing applause. Hugs and kisses from friends and well-wishers. And a special moment for a lawmaker who escaped assassination and is retiring. But it is an election year, and the president faced a sharply divided Congress and an American public worried about the nation's economy.
Tonight I want to speak about how we move forward and lay out a blueprint for an economy that's built to last. An economy built on American manufacturing, American energy, skills for American workers, and a renewal of American values.
The president stressed one of the main themes of his re-election campaign, that reducing income inequality and making the economy more fair is the defining issue of our time.
We can either settle for a country where a shrinking number of people do really well, while a growing number of Americans barely get by. Or we can restore an economy where everyone gets a fair shot and everyone does their fair share and everyone plays by the same set of rules.
Mr. Obama's plan includes tax breaks for companies that keep jobs in the U.S., a new trade enforcement unit to investigate unfair trade practices in other countries, support for clean energy industries, tighter financial regulation, and programs to help send more Americans to college. In the Republican response, Governor Mitch Daniels of the central state of Indiana blasted what he called Mr. Obama's extremism and pro-poverty policy.
No feature of the Obama presidency has been sadder than its constant efforts to divide us, to curry favor with some Americans by castigating others. As in previous moments of national danger, we Americans are all in the same boat.
President Obama said the U.S. has achieved a number of foreign policy victories in the past year. He mentioned the end of the Iraq War, progress being made in the war in Afghanistan, and the killing of al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, as well as the Arab Spring movement and hope for greater freedom in Burma. Mr. Obama also said U.S.-led international pressure on Iran because of its nuclear program is having an effect. He said the renewal of American leadership can be felt across the globe, and America is back.
Anyone who tells you otherwise, anyone who tells you that America is in decline or that our influence has waned, doesn't know what they're talking about.
The president will take his economic plan to the American people when he leaves Wednesday on a 3-day, 5-state trip. Kent Klein, VOA News.
Well, and joining us now for more discussion on President Obama's State of the Union address is VOA national correspondent Jim Malone. Jim, welcome to In Focus.
Always a pleasure.
And I was paying very keen attention to hear what the president's going to say on the foreign policy front.
Right.
There was very little.
It was very little, Vincent. I mean, I've been covering these things a long time, and if you go back to the George W. Bush era, it was usually almost a 50-50 split. Of course, the war on terror was very hot then. We were involved in Iraq, Afghanistan. This president now, this country seems to be looking more inward. So the focus is clearly on the economy. And of course, we have a re-election campaign underway in the United States. This president's fate, political fate, is tied completely to the fate of the U.S. economy.
But we did awake to the U.S. Special Forces operation in Somalia rescuing these aid workers. And if you looked keenly yesterday, the president actually appeared to say something to Secretary of Defense Panetta.
That's right.
Might it have been something related to that operation?
Well, that's what we think, because he said, congratulations, well done. He said it twice, made a point of pointing to the defense secretary as he made his way up to the podium. You know, I looked in the speech, you know, Africa wasn't really mentioned. I mean, again, foreign policy was scant in this speech, but it's interesting that just before this, we had a SEALs action in Africa, in Somalia, to free these 2 hostages. So there was some connection here between the speech and Africa, after all.
And actually, talking about the SEALs, he did make reference to the Osama bin Laden capture, rather killing. And what do you make of his calls for fairness, for working together across party lines?
This has been a huge issue in the United States. We have this Occupy movement, which is somewhat spread around the world, but but is U.S.-based at the moment, and they've made this issue of unfairness. And you have Mitt Romney, one of the Republican challengers, showing his tax returns, made a lot of money. This is going to be an issue in our elections moving forward. The president also tried to put a very optimistic spin on his situation last night and tried to contrast himself, I think, with the Republican candidates who are kind of going at each other hammer and tong right now in a kind of very negative way. So he's trying to make that differentiation for the American people. So
one would say that actually for him this was a perfect opportunity to lay out his campaign platform.
Well, I've been on the campaign trail now for a few weeks following these Republican candidates. They've gotten the spotlight, the limelight. This was the president's chance to sort of come back in and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm still here. The economy's getting a little bit better, and to make his case to the American people. And that's what these presidents do with these State of the Union addresses. It's a very common political thing to do.
Thank you very much, Jim. Your always incisive analysis of the national politics of the United States. Well, that was Jim Malone. Jim Malone, of course, of the Voice of America, is our national correspondent, and he joined us here on In Focus. Thank you.